What's going on, guys? It's Char here, back with another video, and we've got a really special one today with a really special guest. We are talking about solo to multiplayer deck building. I'm joined here today with Abis from MC Deck Discussions. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. So, yeah, my channel is MC Deck Discussions, and I go by Abis Small, but Abis for short. So that's great calling me Abis. I think it's a natural thing for gamers to shorten people's names anyway.
Yeah, I'm the
So
Charr
my
Gam.
channel is all about discussing decks. Build decks, I'll play test them. Sometimes people will request a deck of theirs that I might play test and even do a deck comparison. And so, but it's really all about discussing decks. That's what the channel's for.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really like putting on a couple of your videos and just sitting through deck buildings, hearing your thoughts and whatnot. It's pretty cool. And I get you on the username thing. I go by Charr on like literally everything, but my channel is like way longer than that. Yeah, it's just Charr is fine. I've gone by it since, gosh, it's from Pokemon. So when I was like 10, so like it's been shortened over time. I've been just losing letters on it. So
That's funny. Yeah, mine's actually from Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest
okay.
and some other games that I played a long time ago.
Cool. Awesome. So, you guys might be wondering what the hell we're talking about today. We're talking about deck building, of course, because we have MC Deck Discussions. And let's just get into it. So let's go to the first slide here. So I'm gonna talk a little bit through this a tad. So for me specifically as a player, once I started hosting these like locals in my area, most of my personal free time with the game now, and free time is what I mean like when I'm not recording, is multiplayer. Like I've played maybe a handful of solo games on my own within like the past 2 months, like non-recorded, but I would say a large majority is multiplayer nowadays. Then it kind of naturally goes into the second bullet point talking about online video and deck building and content creation in the Marvel Champions space is extremely solo focused. And I think there's a really important reason for that because it's the easiest, I put in quotations, way to play in terms of it's so easy to, it's only you yourself. You make the deck, you play through the deck, you can play test the deck as many times as you want. You get as many reps in. Like you're not, also, a time commitment, it's much less. It's the shortest mode by far. It's not even like two-handed. So there's so many ways that you can get a ton of reps in to test decks, to play the game and have a good time. And of course, this is not a solo versus multiplayer, which is better discussion, but there are positives to every single player count, I think, in the game and how you interact with it.
Plus, even the camera setup, right? You can set your camera for solo, but try to rearrange that for even two-player would be quite the challenge.
Yeah, I would do some streaming with my buddy on my channel every once in a while, and it's like, we do it over Discord. If he was in person, okay, that's kind of easy. You can sit down at this table next to me. But on the online, I'm like, okay, I gotta get on Discord. I gotta crop around his camera and give him a space on the board. And then my space is like half the size of normal. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough if you're not doing like tabletop or some sort of online simulator, which me personally, I like the physical feeling of the cards, and I think I've said this in videos before that I'm not a big simulator person. I can play them. It just doesn't feel the same. I don't really know how to describe it. I'm sure there's something to that.
I agree with you completely on that.
Yeah.
It doesn't appeal to me in the least.
Yeah.
To play it that way. If there were an official like real game that had a real UI to it that's officially done as a game, professionally done, then that would appeal to me, but the simulator type things don't appeal to me.
Yeah, I respect the work that people put into it, because
people, that's awesome.
yeah, I respect it because it's, people are putting their free time into it. But no, I just really like the physical feeling. Like I like something from my TCG days when I would play those. I like shuffling my hand and like thinking through my options, and like it's just different. It's just different. But back to the topic back to the topic at hand. The third point here. So we're talking specifically, if you haven't checked out the video we are referring to, it was spurred on by Boom Guy's Winning Hand episode about the Rogue Ally, in which, Abis Small made a Spider-Man protection deck in solo, built around the Rogue Ally and, comboing with Spider-Man's strengths and whatnot. And I saw that and I'm like, okay, I love Rogue, I love Spidey, and I'm like, I want to play this deck. But again, most of my free times in multiplayer, I'm like, let me look at this deck because I really liked a lot of the ideas behind it. I'm like, how do I change this from a solo deck to multiplayer, and how I guess this video is also going to discuss how can you know that something's a solo deck? What are some tips and tricks you can employ to change something from solo to multiplayer and stuff like that. And then, as always, with this last point, why not bring the person who made the deck to give some insight into building in solo, and then I can give the insight on changing decks into multiplayer and just have a good discussion based off that.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it because I've only ever played multiplayer, and that's only 2 players. When I first got the game, and my brother and I would play, and we played maybe 3 or 4 times, and then he could no longer visit, and I was like, well, what am I going to do? I want to play. So I'm going to start playing solo. So that's, and that's way back when basically the game first came out. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Let's get to it. So the first thing we have here, we're gonna let Abis take the floor here for a bit and talk about deck building in solo. Obviously, I deck build in solo, but I think it's an important thing to also just get reiterated and get to know the deck builder. So take it away.
All right, thanks. So first of all, player profile. I saw you had this set up nicely for me, and I thought, I'll just highlight the ones I am so people can just see that. So are you the type of player in solo? Like there are a lot of people in solo who prefer to mostly stay just in the hero side, and others like myself who likes to flip when possible. I used to flip a lot actually, and I even had a house rule, so I could in fact flip pretty much every time that I wanted to. But outside of that, just playing by the real rules, I flip whenever I have the opportunity to do so safely. So I would prefer to flip a lot more to alter ego, but I still do it conservatively. And I think part of that too has to do with me being a spike player that I plan on winning. And I've had, like when I used to watch somebody like D20 play his games, and I would think he is the luckiest player I've ever seen in my life. Other than drawing Shadow of the Past, which he seems to draw every game. But as far as him not drawing the card that'll lose him the game, like it used to be all the time that I would play a game, I go to alter ego, and if I could lose, I would lose. And like there was, like if the risk was there, it was going to happen. So I learned to mitigate that risk by anticipating when you're going to draw that advance card that we also fear. And that's going to lose the game for you. So I keep track of that now. Is that in, do I have both of them in the discard pile? Is the villain confused? Is, how much, when you're playing solo, how much, if the villain does get 2 turns, will I in fact lose the game or likely to lose the game? So you start to take those things into account. But as a spike player who plays decks to win the game, my plan is to win every game that I can. So, I meet that spike definition, which, Boom Guy, if you've been on Winning Hand, Boom Guy and Lazy Titan, and when Andy R visits, they've gone over those type of things a number of times on there. I actually can never remember which ones Johnny and Timmy are. It's easy to remember Spike is the player who just plans on winning. And their decks are built to do so. I have, I'm almost like a spike player who wishes they could be a Johnny player. I think Johnny player is the one who likes the big attacks and builds up for those fancy combos and those kind of things, or a Timmy player. Like I've always wished I could, but I just can't do it. But I have been experimenting with, could I get away with not having Nick Fury in my deck?
No, I get it.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons why I like playing Maria Hill, by the way, is because it forces me not to have Nick Fury. So that's actually kind of a nice to be forced to be that way. All right, so moving on to first considerations. So this is an interesting topic here. I tend not to think about this because I usually have kind of a 4 villains that I play against to play test my deck, and I build my decks to go up against multiple villains who have different types of strategies that you might need to build them. So my decks tend to be universal, but that would be an example of a first consideration. So what villain are you going up against? Or in my case, what multiple villains am I going to play test mine against? are those villains that you can stun and confuse, right? Do they have stalwart? If they have steady, they can still be stunned or confused. Just, takes more to do so. So my decks will build that into take that into account when they're built. I don't tend to play against stalwart villains, or if I do, usually it'll be one of those who might be steady at first and then they become stalwart when you're playing expert. And and that's the other thing, right? I would usually play a villain first in standard and then in expert to give myself two different experiences, one where I can play more casually and the other one where, and plus it warms me up and refamiliarizes me with that expert deck. But you also need to take into consideration, when you're playing solo especially, hey, you're doing all the thwarting. So if you, for example, have Spider-Man or Silk, who only have one thwart, although Silk eventually gets two, right? But Spider-Man in particular only has one thwart and doesn't have much in the way of card, has no event cards actually at all that can do additional thwart. Then you have to figure out other ways to do that, which usually means in the solo capacity, hey, you're going to have to put in a fair share of allies to help mitigate that. And in addition, or perhaps you're building a justice deck, so it has more of that built into it. And then also, how are you going to prevent the villain from defeating you with damage? So are you going to be chump blocking with, defending with allies? Are you building a protection deck where you can do it yourself? But, you tend to then still lean a bit, no matter what, towards those extra allies, because you also still, no matter what, you still need that thwarting. So those allies being able to take care of thwarting, helping with minions, also being able to defend for you, tends to mean, at least with my decks, that I'm usually going to have quite a few allies in the deck. 7 is basically a minimum, I would say, in most of my decks, unless I have a special hero like, say, Nick Fury, where I recently built one where I only added one ally to it because he has a whole different way of taking care of not having to take damage. So those are all examples of first considerations that somebody might take into account before starting to build your deck.
No,
and then then the next one, and feel free to chime in or if you have thoughts even.
No, I was gonna say that the first considerations for solo is really important because I find that when you're on your own, you have to do everything. You have to get the thwarting. So like, I love playing Spider-Man, but man, his thwarting is rough. So you have to just find a way to find an answer for that, because you can't have like a second player be like, okay, I'm just not going to thwart at all. Like, my character's bad at it, I'm not going to patch up that weakness. You do get that affordability in like a multiplayer sense, which I thought was interesting.
And then next category here, the hero, the aspect, or a particular card or maybe set of cards. Which do you pick first? And that's going to depend, right? I think if I'm building a deck that's inspired by something, usually that would be a card. Like maybe there are some new cards that came out that I go, I really want to use these cards. What hero might I choose? What aspect might I? Well, actually, a lot of times if you're choosing a card, the aspect is chosen for you, right? I never start with aspect first. That's like never the consideration for me. So most of the time I actually choose a hero. But one of the really cool things, having mentioned Winning Hand, with those people who host that there, right? So Boom Guy and Lazy Titan, they are a one card at a time podcast. So them focusing on one card, and then lately they've been building decks around that card, and then asking the community to build a deck around that card. So those I'm finding to be highly inspirational for me personally, to go, hey, let me try that card. A lot of times I will have never used that card in a deck. And so and other times, like recently, the one that we're going to talk about today, that is a card I've used before, but I didn't center a deck around it before, right? That's a different process than just including the card. And so that's been really cool. So I really actually enjoy it when it's built around a card. I think that's a more inspired build. Whereas a lot of times, especially as a content creator, you go, hey, well, at least half of the heroes I cover kind of should be the newer ones, right? But I've been having fun with that actually. So for a while, I was mostly just covering the newer ones. And I'm like, you know what? It's more fun to cover a new one and then go cover an older one that maybe I got an idea from because I saw somebody on Discord who was talking about a particular hero. And I go, oh, I'd like to try, building a deck with them. So for me, most of the time it's hero first, unless there's, like I said, a new card or I've been, kind of challenged or something to build one from a particular card. Aspect is always last, although, my plan is to build a deck with from every aspect. So if I've already built, say, Spider-Man, for example, already built a Justice deck and an aggression deck that I've covered on my channel, then I'm going to choose something different from that till I've covered all 5 aspects. And I do the pool aspect. I know a lot of people kind of ignore pool, but I think pool presents some opportunities to do things a little differently than you do with the other aspects. Even if they're limited, it still gives you some thinking in a space that's different than the other aspects.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love pool, and I think I also agree. I don't think I ever start with aspect, but some people do. Some people are like, man, I really want to play aggression. What's a hero that helps me play that? More power to them. That's never how I build.
I can actually see that happening more so in multiplayer, where people go, oh, I want to bring a deck to here, and I'd like to be the aggression player. I can see where, even though I haven't, done much of playing in that area, I could see where that might be a way that why people might choose an aspect, even more likely to choose an aspect first. But everybody, like I haven't seen a person who really approaches this game in the same way. Like every single person I talk to has a pretty different way of approaching than everybody else. So I think that's pretty cool. It welcomes everybody to the game.
Yep.
And then as far as staples, I mentioned one staple already, right? What are some staples you find yourself gravitating towards? And I think there are 2 different ways to think of that. One is those who tend to beg to be included in most any deck, and then those cards that are aspect specific. So ones that, well, when I choose this aspect, I'm highly likely to choose, a particular card. So I think a good example, of course, Nick Fury that I brought up, right? So with all that card draw, and then, you want to be able to go down to alter ego in solo. And so a lot of times you're going to include Professor X, right? So that tends to be a staple. And of course, your doubles, right? Your double resource cards. I would say outside of those, I do tend to me, a staple is to pick, a resource generator or 2. So I guess that's the other thing. I mentioned aspect in here, and in general, every deck and aspect, but also some of them are specific to the, what do you call that? The like Avenger versus Guardian.
Like the trait locked ones. Yeah.
Trait, yeah. So there are also ones who would tend to be included if that trait is being used. They have a tendency to be included most of the time. Or one of the traits to alter ego trait of genius, right? That tends to attract 2 specific cards. In most any deck, and you feel like you have to have a really good reason not to include, Moon Girl or. What is that one called?
Ingenuity.
Ingenuity.
Yes. Yeah. No. I get it. And when you say you have a really good reason, I've never found a reason not to. But maybe one day I will.
Is he not included Moon Girl? Actually, there was a recent time when I didn't include Moon Girl because I had hardly any mental resource. Yeah. And I was like, well. Yeah, that actually doesn't really make a lot of sense in this one. Even with Ingenuity included, I'm not too likely to draw 3 cards, so I'll go ahead and skip it. I don't even remember what deck that was, but I recall skipping Moon Girl for once. I go, wow, I actually have one where I didn't include her. But I do, because I don't want my decks to be samey, and because I want to kind of build my capacity to do other decks, I am always looking for a good reason not to include Nick Fury. You know, in a solo,
Yeah,
like it's hard not to for me as a
I
spike
agree.
player.
I agree.
Yeah, but I am always looking for a reason not to. So that's I hope not to. And
Right.
then some other staples, of course, we mentioned if we mention leadership in particular, right? Make the call is one that, like my preference is to include three of those in every one of them. So if I only include one, like I did with Spider-Man, wait, no, not Spider-Man, like I did with the one that I just put out today. I can't remember which hero that was.
It'll be late. I'm sure we'll figure it out. It'll come to you.
But with that one, I included, like, to me that's stretching myself that I only included one make the call, or
Right.
or
Right.
that or that I felt good that I was able to build a deck that didn't feel like it required another one. And I do remember building a deck somewhat recently where I included no make the calls. So if you ever find, if anybody's ever watching a deck where I build a leadership deck and I included one or none, you know I stretched myself.
Yeah, no, there are very strong cards in this game, and like I said, if I'm not spike lean, I don't blame you, because I find myself, even in multiplayer which we'll get into, where you have like a bit more breathing room, I'd say on average, it feels like bad almost to like just not include those cards that are just so good. I mean, make the call is just three more copies of the best ally in your deck, and you can access at any time. It's very, very good. It's almost maybe too good if they were to remake this game. Yeah, that's I totally get you. I totally get you on that. And a lot of the staples you mentioned make sense. For solo specifically, Nick Fury is just crazy unless you're fighting specifically like Gene Pool or like Sentinel or stuff like that. Like uh, just getting an activation and getting him refunded and getting a block is just like everything you need in solo. It's like in solo you need to be able to do everything, and Nick Fury enables you to do everything essentially. He fixes up your survivability, he fixes up your hand, he controls the board. Even if you're playing leadership, you can get another activation out of him with like a command team, so it's even more value. Like it's he's extremely, extremely good. And Professor X in a similar vein, just being able to get you that easy access to alter ego. There's a lot of heroes who literally cannot go alter ego in solo. It's like almost impossible for them to do it. There's just they just don't, they just can't. Like it's rough. So you have to find these answers, whether in aspect, if you're talking like an under surveillance, or in the basic pool like a Professor X, to be able to kind of experience that half of the game is what I'd like to say.
Well, that's why I appreciate, and I consider this a staple too, but I can't remember the name of the card right now, so maybe you'll recall.
Yeah.
So in protection, that we've got the three copies
Ready
of
for a fight?
an upgrade. Yes, ready for a fight.
Yeah.
So to me, that's now a staple because that actually allows me to choose not to include Professor X,
Yeah.
which is great, right? And we'll see that today, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's great to be able to go down to alter ego, actually, frankly, more regularly now in protection than I even do in most any other
Yeah.
aspect at this
Yeah.
point.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, no, and we'll get into that. But first, before we get to the deck, let's go ahead and do a quick primer. If you're playing Marvel Champions, you know him, you love him, but let's talk about him anyway. We got Spidey. So this is what the deck. This was the hero of choice to enable the Rogue Protection ally. You chose to play Spider-Man in Protection, and if you want to go over, do you have any reasons particular why Spider-Man jumped out at you as like this is a person that Rogue's really good with?
Yeah, I was actually, so part of it was I was trying to steer away from the examples that were given
Mm-hmm.
in the winning hand
Yeah, in the
video.
episode.
So
Yeah.
he had done several examples with heroes, and I don't want to just use the same hero and then, especially because I look at their decks and I go, those are some seriously creative decks.
Yeah.
I'm going to build an ordinary deck if I use that same hero. And so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try to pick a hero that wasn't an example, and even possibly one that other people wouldn't even think of as a real consideration. So
Awesome.
when I came to Spider-Man and realized, because and lately I built another deck with Spider-Woman that was also a Web Warrior deck. So I've had Web Warrior, and then with Silk I've had some Web Warrior stuff on my mind. and I thought, oh, Peter Parker, he's not an actual web warrior. This could be kind of a cool build. I wonder what I could do with this. And then as the deck started fleshing out, that's when I started thinking about, oh, if I use her ability, I can actually force card draw on my own turn. Get rid of, by using Rogue's ability, get rid of one of my, Web Warrior allies and take advantage of Web of Life and Destiny to draw a card.
Yep.
And I ended up being very excited about the results of it. It worked out really well.
Yeah. I thought that picking Rogue for a spider build in particular, I thought it was really clever because when I saw it and when I heard you talk about it, I was like, so like, yeah, that's awesome. Like in solo, the card draw is so strong because you are fighting the villain in a resource game, and so when you have like 2 to even 3 extra cards to turn over the villain, also you're able to like spend these on like a swinging web kick. And when you're going from a 4-player game where you're doing 8 to like 100 health versus doing 8 to like 20 health, you're making like a really big progress with those 3 extra cards you drew. And I just thought it made so much sense, and I thought it was really cool because a lot of the times you do want the card draw from these allies, but it can be a bit awkward. Some of them have like 3 health or something. You're kind of forcing their tempo up by taking health from them so that then you get the card draw immediately to continue your turn. I thought it was awesome. But we'll get into that when the deck go ahead.
No, actually, it's probably better for me to talk about other stuff once we get to the deck, so that's good.
Cool, yeah. We'll get to the deck after this, but quick primer, I'm going to go through it. We got Peter Parker. We got his identity card here. This should explain everything. 6 hand size alter ego, 5 in hero. He's got the Genius trait in alter ego, which is super important for Moon Girl and Ingenuity, and he's got the Avengers trait in hero mode. When we look at his alter ego ability, he has the Scientist resource, which is once per round, he's able to generate a mental resource, which is really good. And it's crazy that this isn't even the craziest one in the core set because Captain Marvel gives you a card, he just gives you a resource, but they're still both really good. And then you go into his hero mode, which is kind of the main draw to even play Spider-Man nowadays. I love this ability. He's got this Spider Sense Interrupt. Whenever a villain initiates an attack against you, you draw a card. It's awesome. He has so much more money than you think he does. He essentially starts with 7 resources at the start of the game. You flip up in hero mode, you draw up to 5. Unless you're stunning or webbing up, which is an interesting discussion, solo versus multiplayer. I love webbed up in multiplayer, and I don't like it in solo for that reason, that I lose cards in my hand. But if you're going third in multiplayer, you're stopping 2 activations and you're still getting your card. I play it in multiplayer all the time, actually, if it works out with the timing.
That's good to know. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's and then it's just like you go from 5 to 6 cards, having that extra card for basically you're always getting hit. It's not like something that is. It's not like a chance it happens like with Thor getting a minion. No, you are always getting that 6 card. He has so much more money than you think he does. Not to mention, he's rich. That was the first point. His survivability is absolutely insane. 3 printed defense. He has 2 copies of Black Backflip, which in my opinion is probably the best defensive end in the game, which just says whenever you take damage, you just don't take damage. You're also a defender, so it procs all the perfect defense stuff if you want to go that way. And then also gets Aunt May, which again is, she doesn't give you any resources, but you flip down alter ego, you exhaust her, you heal for 4. You don't have to use your recovery stat. It's better than your recovery stat, frankly, because you only heal for 3, and he just has a ton of survivability. Continuing on, he has horrible thwarting. That's another big thing about Peter. He has like everything you'd ever want. He's got the damage, he's got the economy, but he does not have the thwarting. It is probably in the bottom 10 in the game, if I had to be honest. It's really bad. Like, it is very, very bad. So if you're playing in solo, like we were talking about a bit earlier, you need to have answers for his really bad thwarting. If you're in multiplayer, you can a benefit of that is you can ignore it. You're like, I'm just not thwarting. Y'all have to handle that. I'm gonna go do what my character's good at. I mean, you could build him Injustice in multiplayer, and I've done it, and it's fun. But it's just like, he has things he's more inclined to do, which is, represented on his hero card. His thwarting's his lowest stat. His kit has low thwart. It's like, okay, you either have to patch this up or you just ignore it. And then a last one is, these are kind of my opinions at the end here, but he'd like to flip every turn if he can, in my opinion, because being able to drop that card in hero mode, meaning you have a 6-card hand, being able to flip down into alter ego, it's like every single turn you're having 6 cards and your scientist resource available. So you have 7 resources every turn, because like even if you get that 6 card in hero, you flip down, you use a resource, you draw back up, you still have 6 cards in the resource, you flip up, get another draw, and then you just do it over and over. It's so much money. It's crazy amount of money. And he can get even better turns with Ready for a Fight, which is yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. And also, he has really good damage from inside his kit. He has the what's it called? He has like the baseline that the game is kind of designed around, and they've still done it to this day. 3 for 8 is that baseline kind of damage to cost ratio that very, very few heroes in the game go over. You have stuff like Silk, who can go 3 for 9 on condition on a condition. You have Wolverine, who has like 3 for 8 and can get overkill if he spends his claws. So it's still he still has that really great baseline for damage, and he has good traits, as we were talking about. Genius gives him access to Moon Girl, Ingenuity, and the Avenger trait is also really great because you've got stuff like Inspiring Presence. We're not talking about leadership today, but he's got access to that. He's got Earth's Mightiest Heroes. He's got Quinn Carrier. So yeah, it's really solid card with one big weakness. Anything else you have to add about Spider-Man?
Yeah, well, and the thing is, he has that strength of drawing a card if you can actually remember to do so.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when I first started playing Spider-Man, I thought he was terrible because I could never remember to draw a card when I was getting attacked. So once I started developing a system, so I have tons of systems that I utilize in the game to make sure I remember to do things. And that's like, I have a little piece of paper that says draw on it.
Yeah.
And I take that little piece and I just keep it inside his sleeve. And then whenever I go to play to Spider-Man, I take that and I put it on top of the encounter deck. Then that way, every time I get attacked, I know to draw.
Yeah, that's actually awesome. Yeah, no, I love that. I still try and remember it all in my head. It's a ton of information overload, but whatever works for everyone out there, please implement it. You don't have to go my direction of trying to remember every trigger in the game, because I'm sure I forget a ton. I'm sure I do. Spider-Man though, the economy is not something I joke about. I don't forget that one. I'll say that. That's when I played him, I was like, oh man, I had to figure out what initiate an attack meant, but once I got that, I was like, okay. All right, so that's about wrapping up talking about Spider-Man. Let's go ahead and get into, I think if I remember correctly, the deck list. Yes, so here we are. So here's your deck list. We've talked about it a little bit, but if you want to talk through it, I put a little bit of your description here. If you want to talk through it, I'll give some of my notes, and then we can go from there.
Okay, great. So I wanted to kind of go along with what you said about, utilizing that economy and this deck in particular. So like for me, that theme of the no pain, no gain, I really liked that idea of leaning into it. So not only is Rogue delivering self-pain to, fellow allies, or even possibly Spider-Man himself with her ability and doing damage and then gaining the traits and gaining the extra, thwarting and attacking. But in addition, we have Taunt in here that, forces the villain to attack you, and then nobody else can defend. You can only defend for yourself, which Spider-Man does better than almost anybody. I was really impressed with how he handled that. Even started off with only 2 taunts, and then I said, no, we need a third. I'm getting nothing but benefits from this thing, which I'm not used to. Like, I've tried taunt in a lot of decks. Some decks it didn't really work and I had to give up on it, but it was a definite asset in this deck. And then, as we've alluded to earlier, with Ready for a Fight, you go down to the alter ego side, and on that alter ego side, you're likely going to be coming back to your hero side and get to draw a card again. And and in that case, you could actually defend, which might actually draw you a card again, because you can have one of your allies defend, and if they're a web warrior, they get defeated and you draw another card. So, but you also already drew a card to begin with, because once again, the villain's attacking you. So getting attacked every single round pretty much means that you're always getting that card draw. And with Taunt, it's so cool to get 4 cards. I mean, it's just, you play Taunt, you get an initial card, and then the 3 cards that are going to be coming soon after the attack happens. So you end up with 4 cards. And like, there are so many times with 3 of those in the deck, and with all the other card draw in this deck, there are so many times when you end up playing 2 of them. And
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man's one of the few who could actually handle doing two of those in a row, even with only, 10 hit points. You know?
Yeah.
So I would say that would be the gist of, you know, that whole idea of that, receiving pain, either Spider-Man directly or the allies receiving pain, and getting a whole bunch of gain from the card draw.
Yeah, I really liked the title. I thought it was really fun, and because when you really think about how the deck works, there is no pain. Yeah, no pain, no gain. You need a little bit to get the crazy gains this deck can get. I love the idea of just getting so much use out of these allies, being able to play these taunts because even though you can defend with an ally, right, he has so much survivability, and your backflip can handle it, or you can just basic defend for three because having three printed defense is something also that I felt like I've underestimated for a long time in this game, but it's very good to have three on a defense stat. It's there's just so many new cards you get options to run, and I think another side thing that I realized too is that as long as you're not going for perfect defense, having three defense is almost just like good enough for every scenario minus like Ronin because like it's just like it's so good. Like if I'm on a two defense here and I'm playing defense, I'm always throwing in the armored vest. Could you throw an armored vest in this deck and it would be good? Probably, but it's one of those things where like I don't think he needs it. Like it's just he has so many ways to survive that taking a little bit of damage, getting that flip down at Aunt May kind of covers that little bit of damage that slips through. You flip back up with Ready for a Fight and you just do it all over again. Yeah, it's really cool and really awesome. But I want to talk about a couple of my notes, and feel free to jump in if any of them stand out to you. But what I saw when I was listening to the video, and I didn't actually play the deck in solo, but I've played enough solo where I could kind of intuit how the deck would go through, right? I thought it was really cool because I thought it was super efficient, but it also thematic. You said you're mainly a Spike player, which of course you can see in this deck list in multiple areas. You got Moon Girl, Nick Fury. There's no Professor X, which because he doesn't need it because of Ready for a Fight. But Moon Girl, Nick Fury for sure. The card draws are super good. Face the Past is another one of those that I think is super Spike card because I've played Face the Past in decks where their Nemesis isn't nice because getting the three cards in a ready is just if you build your deck around it, it's just so good. Like what's it called? Vulture comes in with Quick Strike. It really doesn't matter. The ready and the three cards is so much better than taking like the damage or just defending the Quick Strike hit. Also, playing player side schemes I think is inherently very spiky because of how good they are. I like player side schemes. It's not like a negative thing. I love them. I think they're awesome. And I the Web of Life and Destiny to draw off all the spider allies. You have the basic spider package with Power in All of Us. I think leaning into those basic cards is another very spike trait, and it's very efficient because they're good. I mean, that's like there's really no other way to put it. They're very good cards, so you want to build them. You want to build your board. You want to survive and just get all these cards and go from there. I was gonna say,
I think even more
yeah.
so in a deck that draws a lot of cards too. So not only is it super valuable for Moon Girl as well,
Right.
but when you draw a lot of cards, you're likely to get those when you need them because you have other cards to actually play them, and use them as a resource as well.
Awesome. Yeah. My second point was there's a ton of draw, and I'm saying like if you wanted to even spike it to the max, you would just throw an Ironheart as well because she pays for herself off that Power in All of Us. She doesn't give you that card draw for Web of Life and Destiny, but maybe it's a block if you don't feel like defending, but you're not. I don't know. There's so many things you could do for even more redundancy, and redundancy sometimes people see it as a bad or negative connotation. Redundancy in solo I think is very good because especially for Spider-Man, you need redundant forms of thwarting with him because he can't do it. So having those options available at all times, very, very important. Player side scheme, this is the one that I thought was kind of ingenious. Spider-Man has so much money, but he can't thwart. Rogue comes in with 2, so at minimum, even if she uses her touched ability on your identity, she hits that 3 threat threshold to just completely clear it. So you put her down, you have her touch Spider-Man, she gets 3 thwart, you clear the build support, now you've got your Quinn carrier in play, and you're just off to the races at that point. Like, he just has so many cards he wants to put down, he has so many things he wants to do. And then also, like I said, the Web of Life and Destiny, that weird acronym I put there, but I was running low on space, to draw to combo with Rogue was I thought that was awesome. I really like the theming of the deck, even though it's meant to be powerful. I like that you're able to put the spider package in there and in a way that makes sense and is good. I thought that was really cool. And also, I'm a sucker for like one ofs that are kind of fun. Protective training, I think, is awesome. I think there's probably a version of this deck that you could put in. I think armor. No, does armor need to be X-Men locked? I forgot. You could put in like maybe Rock Slide, I think is the X-Men ally, so that there's two targets for the protective training because he has enough money to pay for it. So then maybe you're getting like 15 damage out of Rock Slide because he swings for like 3. So maybe that's another thing.
So beefy too.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where I like the protective training. I think it makes a lot of sense. If you're talking about multiplayer, I think that maybe first aid has more of a thing because it's flexible in a way that you can heal an identity or you can heal another person's ally or a rogue ally yourself. But no, I really liked the deck. I thought it was very smart, and yeah, I think it was really cool.
Thanks.
So we will move on to the next one I've got here. So this is kind of my own section where these are more of my notes, but this is what we were talking about earlier, where we had to talk about the solo caveats, where the deck has to be able to do everything. When you traditionally think of the aspects, protection is like mitigating damage, aggression is dealing damage, justice is thwarting, and then leadership is kind of like everything allies. This deck does prevent damage, but it also invites a lot of damage. You have 3 copies of Taunt because Spider-Man can handle it, and he gets that benefit from his spider sensibility. But it's not meant to protect, right? It uses protection as a means to get free flips into alter ego where he thrives, and it also uses that ways to give him cards to draw. So like an example of another aspect that could do this, like you could do a Avenger lean with like strength in numbers and he would draw also a lot of cards. And like the idea behind the decks are similar, but they're in 2 completely different aspects. And so the solo caveat is, well, we're not going perfect defense because, well, in my opinion, even when I play that in solo, it feels you take too long to get running to make it worth playing, at least in my experience, where like a perfect defense has more of a home when you have a bit more time to build, it feels like, especially if you're fighting expert villains, I'd say. But yeah, I would say protection in a traditional sense is to protect yourself, the board, maybe even your allies from being defeated. But protection here is used as a means of efficiency through stuff like taunt, face the past, ready for a fight, and others.
Yeah, I didn't think of it till now that this idea of taking pain is the opposite of what protection normally is meant to do.
Yeah. Well, I think protection has a lot of kind of different aspects. So I think perfect defense isn't the only thing protection can do, but I just thought it was a really fun thematic thing to think through. It's like, oh no, this deck invites a ton of pain. You're picking off your allies, you're getting 3 copies of taunt. I don't think it's too much. I think if there was no limit, he might even want more than that, in my opinion. But like, it's like, no, I just thought it was an interesting thing to point out. Where like, it's just used as a way. It's really good comboed with his hero kit to have a good result in a solo environment. Another really obvious thing to point out is we're on 9 allies, and this is something I make decks for solo. I play like 8 or 9 allies in every deck. It's just kind of, even the heroes who can do it all, you need the allies to help you out, because sometimes these expert villains, wresting back the tempo from them can be difficult depending on the scenario. Sometimes I think it's really interesting when you look at some villains who come in with like five threat side schemes, like, damn, that's like so much in solo, and then you go in multiplayer, you're like, oh, we got a free encounter card. Like the dichotomy between them is like it's crazy. And the allies help mitigate kind of that randomness that the encounter deck can throw at you. And then, like I said, we've also talked about this, but the built off of the card draw combo through the Web of Life and Destiny and Rogue touching the spider allies to help out resource that villain early. And of course, we have the caveat that we have to find the Warrior of Great Web and Web of Life and Destiny somewhat early. We do have 2 copies of Power in all of us, and Peter has enough money where he can just hard pay for the Web of Life and Destiny. It's not that bad. He can definitely do it, and it's not like a huge hit, but obviously we want to get it in for free because that's like kind of the idea. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the deck. Anything else you have to add to this?
Yeah, no, I'm more curious about diving into the multiplayer aspect.
Sure. So let's get into it. So here is like change the color of the slides a little bit. We're on the shift here. So when I look at a deck for solo, and one thing about me is I do like to build decks, but also when I'm going to these weekly meets and I have a hero I want to play, sometimes I want to just pick up a deck and go. It's like I don't know, I'm not familiar with the hero, I don't know what the hero does, so I'm like, okay, I want someone who knows what the hero does, who makes a deck, who made a deck for me to play and really get like a good I wouldn't say first experience because I've played every hero at least a handful of times, but first like really good deck built experience because it's different from the precons for sure. Um, I would say there's a couple of considerations. So a lot of the times when I make decks going to this like weekly meet that I host is a lot of the decks I are adapted from solo decks or other multiplayer decks, or I find a two or three decks that I like ideas from, but they have cards that I wouldn't play in them, and I'm like, because of the type of player that I specifically am, and I'm like, okay, how can I like meld these into something I think would be really good? Sometimes it's really good and works out, and other times it crashes and burns. So that's kind of the fun of the game. So here are a couple of my considerations when we're talking about going from a solo to a multiplayer deck. So the first point I have here is that you don't have to do it alone, and that's the biggest change from solo, bar none. Lets your deck become more specialized towards your hero or the aspect you chose. And I put Spidey no thwart just to remind us all, as I've said many times, there is no thwarting in this deck that I'm going to show you in a second. I mean, there is, like, the allies can do it. You don't want to be thwarting. You want to defend, you want to attack. You want to recover your health, take damage. That's it. We're not thwarting. I never thwarted a single time. I don't think any of my allies thwarted a single time when I played it. That's just not what we're doing. I will say I put a spider tracer because there's a ton of minions in a multiplayer. So the only thwarting you do is extremely efficient because 1 for 3, I'll do that. He can pay for it. The second bullet point I have is that there's more consideration put towards cards that can apply to any player rather than solo. And so what I mean by that is that there's a couple of cards that say like play under any player control, or any player can trigger this ability, or just cards that you have to look at a second time. Like I mentioned earlier, like first aid is just choose a character to heal 2 damage from. That could be any person's identity on the board, any player's ally. There's just a lot of really cool cards that you can kind of like take a double take and look at again and be like, oh, I didn't realize this isn't just me. Like it isn't just my allies, isn't just my identity. This can apply to anyone. And so I would say overall those cards tend to be a bit less efficient, but when you're in a multiplayer setting, it's made up because the flexibility is so good. There's so many examples of this, and if we're talking like specifically in let's say like a leadership example, I always love Command Team. I think is such an awesome multiplayer card. I also love Cell Phone a lot in multiplayer. It's so good. There's just so much flexibility in being able to call a activation out of turn from someone who's coming up after you. There's just so many cool things you can do, and they're really important to take a look at when you're making decks in multiplayer. A specific example I have in this deck, which we'll get to my deck in a second, is the Dr. Sinclair card. Spider-Man doesn't need the healing. He can use it, actually, if you get like really low and you're flipping down and you're ready for a fight next turn. You can like flip down Aunt May, then spend the mental from your alter ego ability, so it has really good synergy to heal up 4 or 3 more and still heal a status card. So now you healed for 7 on a single flip down, and then you're ready for a fight back up, and you just, like you said, you just do it all over again. That's kind of what the deck does. I would say another consideration is the unique rule. If you do play by that, there's some tables I've sat down that people just play multiverse. I'm cool with it. I don't mind it. But I would say in general, I like to try and follow the rules as written as a player in general. And so the unique rule does become important as ally overlap and support overlap is really important. Another key difference, I don't want to spoil the whole deck, is that not that I can remember, I don't think I have Professor X in the deck. I don't think I have Nick Fury. And the reason is because if I was playing this deck like in solo, like I want the spike player that kind of constantly nibbles at the Johnny player heals of mine. I want all the cards I can, and of course I'm going to play Nick Fury, or I'm going to play like a Professor X and something to get really good use out of my resources. But sometimes you're sitting at a table with someone who's playing a hero on like the weaker end, I'd say, and Nick Fury is way more important in their deck than it is in this one. Spider-Man is so rich. You're drawing so much off the taunts and things like that that you can actually forego that Nick Fury because one, you don't necessarily need it, and two, because someone might need it more, and then and then the unique rule also to get around that is another important consideration. And then for the last one that has an asterisk on it, when you're thinking of multiplayer generally, I would say there is less pressure overall per player. That being said, you still do need a certain level of output because then as a table you start getting overrun. That's where multiplayer is a really big difference, where it does give you a little bit of flexibility to build and play a little less optimally, to not be always playing on this razor's edge. There's a ton of scenarios in solo where the threat threshold is way too low that hitting an advance, or sometimes the villain decks have an extra activation in them that you just simply cannot flip down without a confuse, or you will just lose from zero. Like there's so many scenarios in the game you will lose from zero. They will just you'll flip down one from step one, they'll scheme for 4, then they hit an extra activation, scheme for 4, and that's just it. They just hit 9 threat in one phase and the game's over. Like that's just how it goes. And then that's like a caveat in solo that doesn't really happen in multiplayer. I'm not saying it can't happen if you don't have like a Justice player that's on top of it, or if you guys don't have a Justice player at all and you're not dealing with the main very well, you can still scheme out. I've schemed out in multiplayer, but it's not as prevalent as it is in solo. It's not this ever looming lose condition that tends to happen when I play in solo. Any thoughts on kind of these ideas shifting from solo to multiplayer?
Yeah, I think it's nice to hear these kind of thoughts. Like I built maybe a few months ago, I had built 2 decks together that were meant to be played together in multiplayer. And at the time, I realized, I got to take into consideration the unique rule. But it's not something that's on top of my mind at all when I'm playing solo. And whereas, when you are playing solo, you're always thinking about, how could I lose right now?
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Right? And so you're going, okay, so are both advances in the discard pile? So I can go, to alter ego, even with the villain being confused, right?
Yeah.
Like even with the villain confused, you're still at risk if that advance comes. So, but also sometimes you go, ooh, but man, an attack right now, it's even more likely that they could get an extra attack. And actually, I would lose from an extra attack. So then you're like, okay, it's flip a coin, but I can take the one that has lower odds, right, of losing.
Yeah, I would say it does feel like a coin flip a lot of times, where it's like, I would say as I've played multiplayer more and more, and if I'm not recording in a video and I'm playing solo for leisure, which is more and more rare these days, I just flip whenever. I'm just like, if I hit the advance, I hit the advance. It's kind of like that approach where it's just like, I'm just like not playing around. It depends. Like if I'm recording for video, I can't play like that because I obviously want to get a recording that's a win. That's kind of like important. It depends on the video. If I'm doing like Marvel Rewind, obviously the goal is to beat every villain on expert mode, so that win is required. If I'm doing something for fun, the win or loss doesn't super matter, as long as it's more important to showcase what I'm trying to show than actually getting the win. I think when I did, as a slight tangent, when I did gameplay when Bucky and Falcon came out, I did a game on Bucky. I think it was one new release. And I did a game on Bucky where I think I lost like from 0 scheme to an advance, and I'm like, I'm just gonna play out the last turn because I would have won the next turn. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's one of those things where like I played like a 30-minute game and like I flip down when it's at 0, and then it like schemes out fully from like 8 or 9, and I'm like, it just happens like that. I'm just gonna play out the last turn because the idea was to showcase the deck, not necessarily show that it could beat the villain I was fighting. I think it was when I was doing my leadership deck against Crossbones or something like that.
Yeah, I mentioned that when I first started playing solo, I made up a house rule. Actually, that house rule was because I wanted to have basically the same experience I had when I was playing 2-player.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2-player, which with my brother and I felt like as long as we took turns,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could go. One of us could always go down to alter ego, almost every time anyway. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted that to be very similar. So the house rule that I used was that if I lost from scheming, then I would give myself one turn to recover from it and get
Mm-hmm.
it below. And
Yeah.
I would allow myself to do it multiple times. Now, if you lost from scheming, there are a lot of times you were never going to come back from it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
But I felt overall pretty free to go to alter ego regularly. It was only as I got better at playing the game to decided, you know what, I want to go ahead and try this thing that's a little bit more of a challenge, really playing it with the regular rules. And, at first, even just standard was tough enough for me. It's amazing how you develop over time. And of course, more cards came out over time too to make it better. But it is interesting, it is how much a person can progress over time at building decks and getting better at playing the game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I do like that house rule. I don't think I ever played with it. I probably should have, but I like that house rule, especially. I just think it's solo. There's so many scenarios, and I think the one that I have against Sentinel, I think that is maybe the most brutal solo scenario in the game. One of the most brutal solo scenarios in the game. I just finished fighting Sentinel, and you can't even change his main scheme threat threshold because it's on the card. It's not printed on the card. It's in the force response. So I'm like, oh, 5 per player. That means I can literally never flip down. Like he's just gonna tuck my deck, and then as soon as we get to 4, it's over. I'm like, okay, well, technically, I guess you have 4 chances to scheme out, but if he hits even a single advance on the hero side, he takes a card. You flip down, he takes a card. Like, oh man, that one was brutal. But tangents aside, we will continue on. So, how? So let's talk about me as a player in a deck build. Obviously, if you're on this channel and if you're from Abis Mall's channel, welcome as always. But if you're new here or you just don't know how I like to play the game, here's me in a nutshell. So my player profile, I love playing flipping characters. Flipping was the main mechanic that got me to play this game, and I love to flip. It's my favorite thing to do in the entire game. I just think it's awesome. I will play characters that love flipping, even characters that don't like flipping. I will try to flip as often as I can without trolling in a way. Like there's a ton of characters in this game like Drax who like doesn't flip at all. Obviously, I'm not going to flip on that character. But I do still have like a play pattern on Drax where like I start alter ego, I flip up, then I flip down the first turn, and then I flip up for the rest of the game. Like, then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to start building and going for it. Where some people will just flip up once.
I think that's a legitimate way to do it.
Yeah.
I did a deck recently, this same semi-recently anyway,
Yeah.
same idea. So yeah, I think that's a good way to go, where you go, hey, let's get a bigger hand size for just a little bit, and then start going.
Yeah, just that's it. After that, no more alter ego unless your obligation comes up. Oh man, or any of these other nasty things that force you to lose all your counters. And then for me, in terms of how I like playing, the quick run through. Timmy likes playing those like really big cards. You're talking like your Hulk smashes, maybe your Gamma slams. If they play that card, their dream is completed. That's all they want from the game. Johnny likes these really weird intricacies and combos. He likes making combo decks and doing things. That's where they find the enjoyment. Spike is I want to win. I want to make efficient decks. I want to play good cards, and I want to beat the villains. What I like to say is that I'm kind of like a thematic builder. I like messing with weird combos, but also because I came from like a competitive TCG background, it's really hard for me to play cards that my own internal evaluation thinks is under curve or bad, for lack of a better word. So like I struggle putting any cards that I think are not above a certain like efficiency level. I don't go through the actual numbers or like the ER or anything like that. Just like I have like these internal ideas of like, I think this card is good, I think this card is bad, and if this card is bad, it almost never hits a deck. So that's where I put myself in the middle of these two, where I like playing good cards, but I also like playing thematic heroes, and I like playing the heroes that I play. First considerations for me, I think you had really good things, but a lot of first considerations for me is sitting down and thinking about what do I want to do, and I'll say from the aspect of playing in multiplayer and going to this meet every week, what do I want to actually do this weekend? Am I looking to play like a specific hero? Have I not played like a support deck in a while? I love playing support decks. Things that just like help people out on the table. I like giving people resources. I like, I like Justice. A lot of people in multiplayer don't play Justice, which I think makes a lot of sense because they're like, oh, I'm not doing damage. I love playing Justice. I love keeping the board in control. So it's just like, what am I looking to play is a kind of a lot of my considerations here. But also it's just like, what cards can I, another big thing for multiplayer, I feel like, is like, I don't like feeling like I'm bogging the table down in a way, because there's obviously some heroes that are weaker and stronger than others. That's not kind of where I'm approaching. That's not where I'm coming from this angle at. I'm fine with people playing weaker heroes. It's not an issue. I play weaker heroes. It's not an issue. When I'm talking about like efficiency, I want to make sure like the decks that I bring or the decks that I build or test can actually accomplish the goal they want to do. And what this usually ends up doing is I take out a lot of like one-ofs, or like I don't play perfect defense, for example, because there's a lot of things you need on the board to even get that running. I try and cut the fluff in a way as much as possible, where if I open a card of 5 or 6 hands, there's always something to do with the hand. Like, I don't want to hit a hand that has too many resources. I don't want to hit a hand that has too many conditional cards. And there's been decks I've tried to fix these problems, and I've been successful with ones, some unsuccessful with others. It's just kind of like a process you continually hone over time, to learn about what type of player you are, the type of decks you build and play, and things like that. What I will say for me specifically, hero aspect card, I'm with you. Aspect is not really a thing I ever truly like to pick first, unless I had like a really good idea. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do like, I do have a couple ideas for leadership specifically, support builds with resource reserve, but that's also a card one, so it kind of blends a little bit in the middle there. I would say 99 or 9, let's say like 80 to 90% of the time it's hero. I look at my list of heroes and I'm like, wow, I only ever played this hero in their pre-cons. Let's bring them to the meet. I just, even if I don't really care for their theming, I don't care for their character, I know nothing about them, let's sit down and play it again in a deck that I think lets them shine. And I'll see after a couple plays if I put them away for an extended period, or I find someone that was kind of like a diamond in the rough that I really didn't expect to like as much as I did. I think a very recent example of that for me was like X23 I brought. And I played her pre-con, and I think I was definitely a bit worse at the game then, and I was like, okay, like I get it, like this is fun. And then I made her in a Justice deck, which is kind of like with her basic activations readying up. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I was like, this is amazing. I love doing this. She also has like supporting capabilities with her puncture wound to lower the damage the villain does. And I was like, oh, this is really good. I was really blown away by that hero. I think it was really awesome. I would say at this end point here, what are some staples you find yourself gravitating towards? Again, I think you had really good examples here. The basic doubles, unless I'm playing a hero like Drax or Miss Marvel, or people who have resource requirements or low curves that don't play them. I think the basic doubles are the most ubiquitous things in the game. What I'd also say is resource generators that are tied to identities. So you're talking like a Sorcery Supreme and Blood Gem if I'm on a Mystic. If I'm on Genius, I'm doing Ingenuity. If I'm like playing Aerial, I'm probably throwing in Soaring Acrobatics because of the flexibility of the card, especially if my hero doesn't ready a lot. It's just really flexible throughout the entire game. There's just things like that. I love playing heroes, and I love playing the trait cards that really bump up their power. It feels like really thematic and fun with them. Those are really important to me. And I would say I'd moved away as I got to multiplayer that there are a lot of decks I still play Nick Fury in because he's just extremely good. But there's a lot of decks that I don't play Nick Fury in, and I think this one included, unless I'm going to thumb through the deck real quick to not check if I'm a liar or not. I don't think he's in this deck because I don't think he needed, like I said earlier, I don't think he needed the extra resource help. I think it would have been better fit for another player on the table. You have any comments or anything to add to this?
Oh no, sounds good. I'm looking forward to seeing the changes. I looked at it earlier, but I don't actually remember them right now. So.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So here we are. I didn't publish this deck, but I tried to make a fun play on your deck title. So we have Spidey Slays the Spire with some, alliteration in the title, a roguelite experience. So we're here. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, and this is something that's kind of like on the channel. For some reason, I make 44 card decks. So when I saw your deck was 44 cards, it was kind of like kinship in a way that you didn't even realize. So I'm like, I don't know what it is about 44 cards. Almost every single one of the decks I make, like I'm not one of those person that sits down with 60 cards and cuts it. Usually I build up and I'm like, all right, I'm already over 40. I'll go like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I look at the other cards I was considering. I'm like, no, I'm good here. And it's not like I'm actually counting out up there, but then I go back and count through it. And it's like 44, 44, 43, 44, 44. Like every single time I make a deck, it's just 44 cards. So I'm like, you know what, let's keep doing it. Like I don't force it. Like if there's a deck that I hit like 41, 42, that's fine. But I just find like usually it's like after I get to that 45th, I'm like, okay, I don't want to include this anymore. I don't know why. I just thought that was funny. Let's talk about the deck and kind of the changes I made. So this is something for me as a player, and I know you didn't sign up for a Charr takes or anything like that, but I will have to say it. I'm not the biggest fan of the Web Warrior stuff. It's just not for me. I know people who love it. I know it's super efficient in solo, especially if you have the trait. It's extremely efficient. Even in multiplayer, it can be extremely efficient. It's not for me. Especially on Spider-Man, who needs the Warrior of the Great Web upgrade to play it for free. Like I said with the caveat, he can just pay for the Web of Life in Destiny. He has no problems doing that. The fact that you can get it for free if you have the trait and he doesn't have one, it's kind of like a dissonance for me. And yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on maybe that's a video for itself. I have a lot of thoughts on the Web Warrior things. What I will say is I like the direction they took the trait in the Silk Pack. I really like the additions they made in that one. I think 2099 is really fun, and I think the aggression one was also really fun. I think specifically the basic Web Warrior stuff is something that I'm just kind of like, it's not for me. I'll let other people handle that. It's how I'll put it. So that frees up a ton of...
By the way,
go ahead.
I had 2 decks recently, so Spider-Woman and now Spider-Man, Peter Parker, that had that card in the deck. Those are the first 2 decks I've ever used it in.
Yeah.
Prior to that, so I've been playing all these years, and it was just like within the last month that I even used that card for the first time. So I share your opinion in a lot of ways with that.
Yeah.
It just felt like it was really needed for me to achieve with the creativity I wanted to apply to these 2 decks. It felt like it was really needed for what I wanted. But overall, you know, like what I used to do was I would just house rule and say, you're no longer an Avenger, Spider-Man. You are a Web Warrior.
Yeah, no,
so that's what I used to do before I started, being a content creator.
I think that's an awesome house rule for sure. A lot of my problem with the Web Warrior package is that how basic leaning it is. I think I have a similar issue, and I put quotations around issue with the X-Men. Kind of the strength of their basic allies is very similar, because then it's kind of like you sit down with a Web Warrior character, and it's like, well, let me throw in like 12 basic cards. And it's like, oh, I have like 12 basic cards. Let me put in the power in all of us. I have the power in all of us. All right, I'm going to put in Helicarrier and my Resource Gen and Avengers Mansion. And then it's like, okay, well, I had 15 cards for my hero deck, and I had 15 already from all of these basic cards. And it's like, I have 10 for my aspect. It's not for me. I like it. It's strong. Trust me. If I want to win, I'm doing a basic deck. Like, if I want to win, that's a completely different vibe, right? Like, but in these multiplayer games when the win isn't as important and the stakes aren't as, razor thin, I'll shy away from that a bit. But because I got rid of the Web Warrior stuff, right, or I swapped it out, what did I replace it with is the question. And a lot of it is really funny. I have really big fondness for the core box protection cards in specific. We have a lot of core box protection in this deck. We have Black Widow, we have Luke Cage, we have all 3 copies of Indomitable, and we have the 2 powers of protection. We are throwing it back with this deck in particular. There's a couple reasons. Black Widow in multiplayer I think is awesome and really underrated. She is an encounter card cancel for anybody any type of card. I played it. We played against Expert Hello when I was playing this deck in the one game I played. I canceled 2 of the Expert set cards just by leaving her on the board. There was no exhaustion. There was no under fire. They both got canceled. It's so awesome. That card is so. I don't think most characters in solo have they either don't have the economy, they don't have the ally slots, or they just don't have the room to play something like that. It's kind of like a Stepford Cuckoos who takes he takes an ally slot instead of like having counters on her. So I understand why people don't play it. In multiplayer, I think she's completely awesome. Another one which I think is completely crazy is Jocasta. This card's crazy. She finds backflip. She finds desperate defense. And because we're moving into multiplayer, my idea was that I did want to defend for multiple people, not just myself. Now, this doesn't mean the whole table. I don't think this deck can defend for the whole table. I'm going to get ahead of that right now. It can defend for maybe 2 to 3 people a turn, depending on kind of the cards you draw into. And yeah, another addition was Luke Cage. This is someone that I just love this ally. I don't mind the tempo hit. Usually your multiplayer games are long enough where I never defend with this tough, and I never use his thwart stat. It's just attack, turn him over, attack, turn him over, attack, attack. Like, he controls the board. He does damage to the villain. And also, the angle that I took with including Rogue in this deck that was similar to your deck is Rogue actually speeds up Luke Cage's tempo. By dealing that 1 damage to him, you're taking that 2 damage he would have done, putting it onto Rogue, and now Rogue's swinging for 4. Or she's thwarting for 3. So that idea that playing Luke Cage in general, because he has that tough and 5 health, it's a tempo hit, because it's kind of like you pay for this upgrade that lasts 5 turns to just deal 2 damage anywhere. Now you're speeding that up. You're taking that health that he doesn't need. A similar thing is Jocasta here. She has 2 printed thwart, but she has that 2 consequential damage. You're actually getting like above rate if you wanted the thwart for whatever reason, because now Rogue's thwarting for 4. And Jocasta is only taking 1 damage. She can maybe turn sideways, do a 1 damage herself, and then she still has something up to like chump block for another player on the table. I never use my allies to chump block for myself in this deck. He doesn't need it. They're for my allies to use or my other players on the table. Couple other additions. 2 copies of Desperate Defense. What I say for myself as a player, I really don't like defense events because I feel like sometimes you draw into a hand, because I like to flip is the main reason. So like if I'm playing too many and I flip down and I don't have a way back up, I have a hand that doesn't do anything. So I think 2 copies of Desperate Defense is like low enough to where I'm like, oh, when I find this and I draw into it, it feels good to play. I'm gonna exhaust, I'm gonna defend for 5, hopefully not take any damage, ready up, defend for somebody else, and then go from there. 3, I don't know why I didn't ever test it with 3. I just thought 2 would be good enough. 3 copies of Taunt. You went into length on why this card is awesome. He draws a card off of playing it. He also draws the 3 cards after taking no damage because he has so much survivability. And then 3 copies of What Doesn't Kill Me, because this isn't a perfect defense deck. And also, Spider-Man has easy access. If you look at the card, I never really look at these graphs on Marvel CDB here. There's a ton of physical resources in the deck regardless. So he can hit the kicker, but also he has 2 copies of web shooters. So resource requirement cards for Spider-Man are actually pretty easy for him to hit because you usually have a wild available at all times. Also, if you're playing Quinn Carrier, usually that's not really that bad either. For our resources, we're on Energy Genius Strength and 2 Power Protection because I'm playing big allies in this deck. Black Widow's 3 costs, Jocasta's 3 costs, Luke Cage is 4, Rogue is 4, What Doesn't Kill Me is 2, Dr. Sinclair is 2. Like, I think there's enough cards in here to warrant the inclusion. And the wild resource is also nice. We are varying a little bit on the supports here. I threw in an Avengers Mansion because we have that tempo. We have a little bit more breathing room where when you get all these cards in your hand, if the board is under control, you can just pay for this mansion and now you have an extra card guaranteed every turn to use, or you give it to someone else because, like I said, he has so much money. Sometimes taking that Avengers Mansion, you're like actually passing turn with cards in your hand, and you don't really want that in multiplayer, so give it to someone who can use it. There were so many times I gave a Wolverine player on the table an extra card because they're like, man, I don't have an attack event and I want to use my claws this turn. I'm like, take the Avengers. He'd draw into the attack event, get his overkill going, and I was like, that's the point. That's why it's there. Dr. Sinclair, amazing multiplayer card. I think 3 different people on the table used it to heal up without having to exhaust. All you do is spend that mental, you heal up and remove a status card. So someone got to flip down, remove a stun or a confuse. Amazing multiplayer card. I love this card. And Helicarrier. This one might be a bit.
I've actually never thought of that card because it's a strong card. If you're going to defend, it's just super strong in solo. But I never thought about that it could be, because I don't pay attention to that part. But
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, anybody can trigger this ability. It's the most powerful wording on that card where anybody can use it when you're flipped up. They just flip down, spend the mental, exhaust it, they heal up, and remove a status. So good. So good. And then the one that makes a lot more sense when you learn that I like playing support decks. We're on Helicarrier. We are not on Quinn Carrier. I want resource generators, but I want flexible resource generators that can be used by my teammates. Again, you have so much money in this deck. Sometimes you draw into these hands that you can play a couple cards and like you'll keep a desperate defense for the villain phase. Maybe you can keep an enhanced spider sense or something. And sure, you could draw off your Avengers to try and find something else to do, or you could just give the Avengers and Helicarrier out to somebody else, make their turns better, and now you're not drawing through your deck as fast, and you're just increasing the output of the entire table rather than trying to force your own output on the table. Now when we're getting to the upgrades here, this is the one I was alluding to earlier. I think another Charr take might be my favorite protection card in the game. I love Indomitable. I think this is like one of the most well-designed and kind of aging cards in the entire game. Limitless Stamina is a card you play in every single hero who has 14 health. This is like Limitless Stamina, but you can stack them. I love this card. I think it's so good in protection. There's multiple turns where I was just like, I'll just stack another one. And then the turn when I really needed it, like someone got an extra attack activation in their encounter phase, I'm like, I've got you. I readied up off the Indomitable earlier. And then I'll just use it again and then keep a ready. Or I don't ready because like maybe there's another turn where I need the ready more. Or I have the what doesn't kill me in hand. And it's just so good. We're obviously in here with Ingenuity because we're a genius. We got to play it along with Moon Girl. I did end up throwing a copy of Practice Plan in the deck. I found that the deck draws so many cards that there were times where when I would think that you would see, there was one time when I drew so many cards, I had all 3 ready for a fights in my hand. So like once you play out that turn, you don't get them for an entire deck pass. And where it's not that this deck like shuts off, right? It's not like it doesn't do anything, but obviously it's so good with the ready for fights that even having that Practice Plan, which is max 1 per player, it's a similar kind of philosophy of I don't want to see multiples of this card, but when I see it, I'm going to put it on the board and it's going to stay there because when it triggers to get me that ready for a fight back, it's gonna be great. Like that's the whole idea behind it. And yeah, obviously they're ready for a fight, which brings the whole deck together. A couple of my notes I want to go through real quick is, like I said, I wanted to defend for multiple people, not necessarily the entire table, but some of the squishier characters on the table or identities. Also, they could use my own allies' blocks if they needed to, because even though I wanted to get a ton of, activations out of them, if I'm sitting on a Jocasta with 1 health, her 2 thwarting doesn't matter as much as defending an attack if I'm not able to. Another one where it came to me as a player that I talked about, it's quick to start. There is really not a ton of things you need to get down to get this deck going. There's no armored vest, there's no electrostatic armor, there's no unflappable, it's not a perfect defense build. You want to ready for a fight, you want to flip up, and maybe you got like a web shooter down on the board. Maybe you play a taunt, you like build out a resource generator. As soon as you hit that ready for a fight down, the deck starts going. You flip down, you just take advantage of the combos, and it just goes from there. Money just starts flowing your way. And then we already talked about my thoughts on the spider package at the beginning of this section. And also the last one I thought was funny. There are big green allies in this deck. Sorry, Hulk, I'm not talking about you. That Rogue can speed up the tempo of, and by taking the health from them and adding it to her own activations. So after playing this deck, and I do plan on playing it again next weekend, what I found is that a couple of changes that I would make. I found the deck was really good with like a leadership player on the board with like the command teams to speed up those kind of slower tempo big protection allies that aren't playing in here to get their activations out early, so maybe they can like defend for someone on the table or do something or the other. I think another addition, which is one of the removed cards you had, which is like render medical aid, might make its way back in here just to heal up rogue. If not, maybe throwing in like a couple of messing with the numbers a little bit, maybe throwing in like a first aid or two, because it does have that flexibility in multiplayer. If I don't have rogue on the table, Spider-Man has so much money that maybe you just heal someone's identity for 2 so that they are like, I don't know, ready to get back into the fight faster than maybe you can because you have on May, of course. So those are just some considerations I've thought of, but I thought the deck worked really well. I thought it was super fun, and I took the general concept. I'm not drawing as many cards, of course, as you are, but using that concept of speeding up the tempo from these bigger allies on the board to get a good use out of rogue, to also change that not into card draw to kind of solo a villain myself, but to change that into cards that help me protect people from having to go down, to let them continually output. Another big key thing in multiplayer is calling actions out of turn. So if we are in hero mode, they can call all of their hero actions out of turn, whereas if they're constantly having to flip down, the flexibility kind of like lowers overall. So the idea is to keep them up, keep them healthy, and defend and get some ally activations going.
I know that when I looked at your deck earlier and saw the additions of the extra Indomitables and the Desperate Defense, I thought, oh, this is so cool how much readying this deck has. And then when you need it, what doesn't kill me on top of that? So I just really, I was like, these are some cool changes. I really liked them a lot.
Yeah, and multiplayer gives you that flexibility to kind of lean into those readies when you don't need to have so much put into doing everything. Spider-Man, his readies are really strong for him as long as you're not spending those readies to thwart for 1. If you're spending them to defend for 3, or you're spending them to swing for 2, they're really, really good. And also defending from that taunt hits that are coming your way, because when Hela was on her stage 1 with a 2 attack set on Expert, I was taunting her every single time. I was like, you're hitting me, hit me again, let me get these cards going, let me set up my Hela carrier, my Avengers Mansion, my Dr. Sinclair, and we just go from there. This is kind of like a side-by-side look of the decks real quick if you wanted to see them. A couple of those tips that I was talking about do kind of show up here when we look at the deck list. There's less allies in a multiplayer deck. The upgrades are about the same amount. I do have one more support, but this is kind of like a player thing where I like to hit the ground running. I don't want all the 1 cost unless I'm really into playing perfect protection that day. I don't want a ton of 1 cost I have to get on the board. I just want to get down to it and get going. We don't have the player side scheme because I can't handle it, but if someone wants to bring in player side schemes and I get to benefit from it, I'll do it. That's not what this deck is aiming to do. It does not have the thwarting for it, but it does have the events taking advantage of that desperate defense and the what doesn't kill me to constantly be healthy and ready. And one thing that I thought was really cool that I did want to note here, I don't think I wrote it in any of the notes that I just remembered, was Spider-Man has a really awesome interaction in multiplayer for Ready for a Fight. So it's super good in solo because you flip down at 6 health, right? Or sorry, 6 cards in hand. You trigger the Ready for a Fight. The villain initiates against you as an attack. You draw a card. You have 7 cards in hand. And then either you can spend the 7 cards, or you can flip down and like make 8 total resources, right? Because you have the 7 cards in hand. And you have that 8th from your resource ability, and then just do it all over again. Multiplayer can get even crazier depending on the order of the players in a turn. If you have somebody who's before you in turn order, who's in alter ego, you trigger the Ready for the Fight on their scheme. So now you're getting 8 cards in your hand instead of just 7. So he has even more money in a way. Just really, it's so cool. It's just, he has so many cards. I got to do that so many times. I'm like, no, yo, trust me, you can flip alter ego. So like they schemed against him, then I flipped up on their scheme activation to draw a card. I was next. I drew another card, and it's so good. It's also
Nice.
it's
That's
so
really cool.
yeah. No, it's awesome because it's so flexible, because you're also like canceling a scheme and you're taking that attack, so like you're still defending while they're getting schemed on. Really, really cool stuff. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you pointed that out, because that's not something that was even on my radar at all.
Yeah, no, it's really, that's what I said when I saw Ready for a Fight and Spider-Man. I'm like, this is like the perfect. I don't know why I haven't played this yet. I'm like, this is gonna be awesome, and it really went really well. My quick notes, like I said, was less card draw. It was because I don't find an individual card as impactful, and I put an asterisk here in terms of knocking out a villain is what I meant. Like these extra card draws in solo are getting you to that swinging web kick to progress the scenario. It's getting you to these allies who can thwart for you. In multiplayer, these extra cards are getting me to build up my resource generators to maybe help the table, play down these indomitables so I can defend people's health bars. And then at the third or maybe fourth step, okay, I have extra resources. Let's throw an 8 damage into the villain here, right? So it's just like a difference in like priorities and the scaling of health, threat, and whatnot. Quicker to start, less required, and I put those in like quotation marks because I don't think your deck is slow to start. I think that Peter has so many resources that he can start really fast regardless of the cards you put in it. But I would say without having like the spiders and things that have like you have to have a web warrior trait on the board, there I have more cards that are initially playable than being required with the Warrior of the Great Web or Web of Life and Destiny, which is still 3 cards out of 44, so you're pretty likely to have those. But obviously, the deck can mess you up sometimes. The amount of times I've played a Spider with Web of Life and Destiny as the last card in the deck is definitely more than 0. So,
yes, that's happened to me quite a bit, which was part of why I was really pushing that card draw.
yeah.
And it happened to me in my 8 plays with that deck. It happened to me just once where it was the very last end of cards that I had. But I'm so used to it happening really frequently in the past where I go, no, I've had it happen to me too much, where it's like the last card. And if I rely on Web of Life and Destiny as my card draw, it might not happen for a while.
No. Yeah, I definitely get you. And then obviously more specialized as we talked about earlier. But this is kind of the deck side by side, and I thought it was a really great example of kind of like how I thought through the process of adapting this to multiplayer, how I adapted to my own playstyle as well, and how we can change this idea of card draw, this idea of speeding up tempo through Rogue in different ways to meet that victory condition of obviously knocking out the villain. I'm giving my extra resources to my Wolverine player to get him to do damage that I'm not able to do. In exchange, I'm protecting his health bar so he can exhaust his claws every single turn and deal the damage I need him to do. Like that's like the idea, right? So I thought it was really
Did you find it that you guys were able to just constantly be dealing damage because of that?
Yeah, no, I think that being able to defend in multiplayer is really unique because it doesn't seem impactful in solo, and I'm like really guilty of this because I'm like I don't like playing protection in solo unless I'm doing the ready builds because it feels kind of slow. It feels like you're not making progress. But when you're doing this in multiplayer, you're preventing people from taking these tempo hits of flipping down, even though they get an extra card. Like I said, being able to call actions kind of fluidly is pretty important in multiplayer from what I from my own plays. They're able to stay up. They don't have to worry about using their activations to recover or defend because I'm like, nope, I've got it. Let me take care of it. You focus on dealing the damage. I got you from that. And it just works really well. It lets the Justice player, again, don't worry about your health bar. I've got you. I've got my Desperate Defenses. I got 2 Indomitables down. I've got my allies at, if they have 1 health left, I'm not averted. What is it? I don't have like an aversion to chumping with my allies if they've gotten all their activations out. Now, if you're asking me to chump with a 4 health Luke Cage, I'm going to look at you sideways because maybe there's some better plan that could have gone in on your end, but I will still do it, right? Like, or maybe the cards could have fanned out a bit better for you. It's not always a deck building issue, but I say that as a joke, obviously. But yeah, no, it worked out really well. And like I said, this is one of those decks that I loved Peter. I love his economy, and I think this is a really great showcase and a really good card to showcase in his deck that I'm going to be playing it next weekend. Enchantress comes out this Friday. I don't know specifically when this is getting uploaded. I think it's going to be the day or the day before the scenario comes out. If not, it'll be the week after. But I don't know exactly when my uploads are panning out. That being said, I will play him against Enchantress standard expert. I'm going to be playing a lot of that scenario over the weekend. Also Loki as well. So we'll just see how it goes then. And I'll be happy to update it when I do.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah. And so I think that's about it for looking at the decks. We're on the conclusion. I don't even remember what I wrote here, so at the very end. But I would like to say there's a couple of considerations I had was there's just so many different things to consider when deck building in this game, especially when going from solo to multiplayer. Solo requires you to do everything and have a little bit of everything, have that survivability, have that thwarting, have that damage. Multiplayer doesn't require as much for you, but it requires it from you in a different way to specialize. When you're playing a protection deck, and the goal is to defend, you need to be able to defend. Like, you need to have your role. If you're an aggression deck and your goal is to deal damage, you need to be very, very good at dealing damage because you don't have that inherent flexibility anymore. Can you roll up into like a 4-player game on all leadership, all like good stuff decks is what I call them, that you can do a little bit of everything and have success? You will have a ton of success doing that. But I do think multiplayer is really fun and really does shine when people really lean into these aspects and lean into heroes who are good in these aspects. Like I think Spider-Man is in protection for sure. I would say it's important to take the time to make adjustments. If you're a solo player, and I know my channel is primarily solo gameplay, even though I play a lot of multiplayer nowadays. If you're a solo player and you want to go to a multiplayer meet, first of all, awesome, you should do it. You're going to have a great time. But also, it's equally as important to try and adapt that deck a little bit to multiplayer. There's a lot of, I call them like solo specific cards. You're talking about like the clear the areas, the one way or another's. The very, very strong solo cards that not that they aren't strong in multiplayer, but they take that extra bit of consideration. When you're pulling out a 3-threat side scheme in solo with one way or another to draw 3, that's awesome. You just have Phoenix basic activate, it's gone. If you're pulling out a 12-threat side scheme in multiplayer, that's completely different. And the 3 cards, like the win, what's it called? Like kind of the expected value goes way down. And again, there's heroes like Miss Marvel who will still play it because she just explodes. She like spits out thwarting like it's nobody's business in multiplayer. But not every hero's like that. If you're playing like a mid-rangey, I don't know, I'm trying to think like maybe like a Scarlet Witch Justice, and you're trying to play it one way or another, I'd maybe double check. I don't know if she has that thwart for that. And then also at the very end here, we have combo-oriented builds. This is kind of my own advice talking about multiplayer. May, with an asterisk, take a little bit too long to get going. And you also have to think about what is your payout due to the scaling. A really good example is like this new strengthen diversity card that came out with Falcon. I think that card is awesome in solo, right? It's awesome in single player. You can get so much value out of it, but when you go into multiplayer and it costs 8 at 4 players, is it worth, like, it's just things you have to think about. It is different, but it's also the same, and I think that's what makes the game awesome. Do you have anything else to add as conclusions for kind of this discussion we've talked about? Anything you thought was really insightful, or just anything to add?
Yeah, I think I'm have said all the things I want to say. But other than that, I think it was really fun being able to team up with you here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
And being able to get a chance to be on your channel here. And really cool, though, just hearing about how much things change when you're dealing with multiplayer. That it makes for just a lot of different things to think about that are different from solo. But also, one of the things I was thinking about just recently, too, is it really limits you a fair amount in solo if you are going to include what it takes ally-wise to deal with everything, because you have so many allies. That also reduces the pool of cards you tend to have available to you for the rest of your deck, and limits the variety, at least if you're going to have real competitive decks.
Right.
And so, you know, there might be times when I'm going to want to, as a solo player, maybe choose a particular villain, maybe just play them on standard and do a deck that goes against that one, and be able to reduce the number of allies so I can get a larger variety of builds where I don't care about taking care of every single thing for the hardest villains there are in Expert.
I completely agree, and that's why I always think standard is a really good mode of play for this game, because it's fine-tuned to what you want to do. Solo specifically, I think, can get bogged down. I call it nowadays, not like in a bad way, but it almost feels like a puzzle game in specific scenarios, especially the really difficult ones where it's like You just need to find the answer to the puzzle. And where multiplayer feels a lot more free flowing because it gives you that extra flexibility of everyone having a specified role to really lean in and build for that role. When you're talking about solo and standard, you can get that kind of role flexibility back because the stakes aren't as stringent. It's not as much pressure, it's not as much tempo, and I don't have any problem playing standard or expert. A lot of my multiplayer games I play in standard, but now that I've had this kind of event going for long enough, we're moving on to expert as kind of like a group, which is also a whole new avenue because expert doesn't get any easier in multiplayer, I'll tell you that much. Maybe if you're talking specifically Ronin, he technically gets easier, but other than that, man, you are gonna be in for a surprise. It is still tough, and you need to play some good decks, but you still do have a bit more flexibility. I had that asterisk earlier that you don't get in solo because you don't have to play Nick Fury in every deck. You can do other things. You can lean into these aspects, lean into what your hero is good at, and still succeed and have really fun times. But as always, like I said, I think it was an awesome discussion. I really love the deck list for solo. I'm glad you got to see like kind of my thought process, taking it, adapting it to multiplayer, and kind of my own experience playing it. And thanks for on such short notice sitting down with me to have this chat. I think it was awesome. I do this to a lot of people. I think the one time I did a collab with Daring Lime talking about the current environment, it was also like a 1 day turnaround. He's like, sure, let's do it. And I was like, awesome. So just really glad your flexibility was awesome. It was great to have you on. If you want to shout yourself out again where people can find you, you will be linked in the description and in the title. But yeah, we can just take it away through there.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, so one last time then. So my channel is MC Deck Discussions, and I am known as Abis, but you can always call me Abis for short. And appreciated the discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, that was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave a like. YouTube outro obligatory. Leave a like down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out Be Small and MC Deck Discussions for some great solo specific deck building content. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Have a good one. Bye.
Adios.